And a good afternoon. Welcome back to the Afternoon 5-State Farm Report. Daniel Drotzman, your host here for 570 WNAX. Want to first take a quick moment to thank our sponsors, DeSmet Farm Mutual Insurance, Fordyce Co-op, and Total Auctions and Real Estate for bringing you the Afternoon 5-State Farm Report on this Monday. So thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to be checking in with Matt Clair. He is the brand inspection supervisor for South Dakota. Well, Matt, thanks for joining us here today on WNAX. How are you today?
Good. Doing real good. Yeah, I'm glad you have me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to get you on. So I guess we are kind of officially, out to pasture with cattle. Most producers should be anyway. So I guess with that being said, you're based out of Pierre, South Dakota. So I know there's been a lot of concerns about kind of pasture at the moment in your area. So I guess just first, get us kind of up to date on some conditions and I guess what you're kind of hearing from producers at the moment.
So in some of the areas, pastures are looking quite a little bit better now here just in the last couple of weeks. There is still some areas that are pretty dry. Some of the hay ground still isn't the best for some of these guys. And, it's kind of looking green, but I think it's kind of bare when they're kind of getting out in them. So.
Yeah, and I guess with that, I know many producers are probably aware, but I guess in South Dakota, we're talking about brand inspection here. So I guess where exactly is the brand inspection area?
So the inspection area is anything on the west side of the Missouri River.
And is there kind of a reason why it starts where it does and is mainly in western South Dakota, or just for simplicity, I guess, is there a reason why it starts there?
Nobody really has an answer. This was something that was started, probably in 1937, I think, when the inspection program started. I think a lot of it's just the land, just a lot bigger country, West River, more pasture ground. And like I said, nobody really has the answer why when they started that back then that's why they did it. So
yeah, and I know there's not so many rules about, I guess, entering a brand inspection area. It's more on just leaving the inspection area. So maybe just kind of fill us in on some of the rules and regulations that we kind of should be aware of or be following there.
Okay, so if you are coming from like a non-inspection area, East River, South Dakota, yes, you don't have to do anything coming in or even passing through it. Of course, when you do if you're in the inspection area and once you do unload your livestock, then that is when it does need inspected to either cross back going East River or to leave the state from the west side of the river then.
Gotcha. So, you guys probably do a lot of work around sale barns, too, in kind of that western South Dakota area. So, is there any specific rules circling around, like, sale barns at all?
Yeah, so everything that's sold through a livestock barn on the west side of the river gets inspected in. We do have several barns on the east side of the river that we call them, they're shipper barns, and they're for any cattle that come from West River. They have to get a shipper permit, and they are allowed to travel to that sale barn. And we do have an inspector at those barns, and that the cattle will be inspected as soon as they get to those sale barns. Locker plants, everything that's killed at a locker plant on the west side of the river, we inspect those. Anytime there's a change of ownership, even if it's only one head, those all need to have a change of ownership done and inspected.
Gotcha. And you guys mainly deal with cattle. I think maybe I saw you do some horses too. So I guess is there kind of different sets of rule for horses at all?
The only thing different for horses, we do acknowledge freeze brands on horses, whereas cattle we don't in the state. We do got shipper permits that are allowed to go to Nebraska sale barns for cattle. For horses, we don't now because there's no brand inspection in Nebraska for horses. So if you're sending a horse from South Dakota to a Nebraska sale barn, you have to have a local inspection done to get there.
Gotcha. And I know kind of some of these rules may kind of just stem around preventing like theft and stuff like that. So, it's not something we really hear about too much. So, do you still get a lot of reports around like theft or of either cattle or horses, or just kind of fill us in there?
Yeah, we still get some reports on cattle, of course. Horses, we don't hear of hear of so many there. This last fall, our numbers, I'm just kind of going off our calf numbers. I don't think we had near as many as we did from the fall of 24 now. But yes, there's still some missing reports coming in. So.
And I guess with that, when we get to the fall season, a lot of people will probably be bringing things home from pasture and all. But if we realize that something's missing, I guess, what do we do? Do we contact you? File a report? I guess, what's the procedure there?
Okay, so always let your local sheriff know what's going on. And then, too, to contact us to let us know, because, something else that is very important. Even if you only think you're missing one head and you're not sure, well, did I lose it or for whatever reason, a lot of times we get a lot of stray cattle hauled into sale barns in the fall time, and it seems like usually for some reason, those sometimes aren't the best branded ones. Whereas if we kind of have a heads up on some of these strays, if you're reporting you're missing livestock, we kind of have some brands we can look into on whose it possibly could be. And like I said, we're just counting your livestock when you're hauling out to pasture, just make sure that you have several people counting and that your count is correct, so you do know if you actually are missing or maybe sometimes you might be missing something but you don't realize it because your count was off, the first time you hauled cattle out. So.
Yeah, and I guess, do you have just like a specific example of a situation that happened that you could share where like a brand inspection kind of saved the day and saved a big headache at all?
Oh, there's quite a few different scenarios like that, I guess. I can't really come up with one right off the top of my head right now. I guess I would just say, too, branding is the real important part on branding correctly. Especially when guys that use hot electric irons, when you get into having 3 symbols or letters into one iron, be pretty careful on putting those on. Those can block really bad when you have that much heat in one spot. And to putting your brand on how it's registered, I guess I do got a quick story on that. We had a guy last fall showed up with a stray cow, and there was only one brand on her, and it was a real good big calf hood brand, and was having a hard time figuring out where this brand come from. And finally we got figured out that it was actually come from the guy was running some cattle that in an area where he wasn't from, but he wasn't putting his brand on correctly. So, we were able to figure out who the actual owner was, but, on how your brand is registered is how you need to put it on.
And again, that's Matt Clair. He is a brand inspection supervisor for South Dakota, and we had a nice long interview with him, so we'll maybe air the rest of it here later on this week. And with that, we'll take a quick break. We'll take a look at your local weather and then round out your hour here today with some cash grain numbers. So stay tuned to 570 WNAX. I'm Danielle Drotzman.